See, that's the sort of energy we need if we're going to recreate a riot. And not a Zoot Suit riot, but the women's riot that happened right here in Columbus, Georgia, April of 1863. We're going to present to you a dramatic reading from some of the character scripts that will be performed here, real time, real space, at our Museum Theater Festival in April. But right now, we're doing this as a teaser for Art Beat, the premier pan-Columbus, pan-arts organization. Interested citizens, interested education groups come together to bring you art in the streets. Let's give it up for Marlene right there, head of Art Beat. You know her, you love her, you can't live without her, and you can't live without art. Well, you can, but is it really living? No, it is not. So, without further ado, I'm going to present to you the actual newspaper account published April 11th, 1863. I will read to you the actual account, and then we're going to hear from the people that the newspaper article talks about. So the Daily Sun, Columbus, Georgia, Saturday morning, April 11th, 1863. Heading, a mob in Columbus. An event which we had been long expecting transpired in this city on this morning. A company of women, led on and encouraged by a few vagabonds whose presence is a pestilence in any community, and especially so in ours, congregated near the bridge in the upper part of the city, organized themselves into a seizing party, and proceeded down Broad Street for the purpose of making impressments of private property on their own account. The company numbered about 65 viragos, some of whom were armed with pistols and knives, all cursing and swearing and threatening what they intended to do in case the speculators or merchants refused to grant their reasonable requests. They proceeded down nearly the whole length of the business part of the street when they came to a halt in front of Mr. George A. Norris's dry goods store, entered it, and commenced helping themselves to whatever they wanted when the police was called in, and then the mob dispersed. A competent guard has since been furnished by Major Humphreys of the Ordnance Department, and no further apprehension is felt. One man, a graceless vagabond by the name of Brooks, generally known as Shanghai Brooks, who accompanied the mob to the store and who stood outside the door encouraging the Amazons in their seizures, was arrested and is now in jail. What disposition will be made of his case, we are not advised. This is some of the legitimate fruits of what our Georgia Governor Brown is pleased to call impressments for the benefit of the people. It began in this state with that functionary 2 years ago in Atlanta or other markets in Georgia, where salt was selling at $10 to $12 per sack, and has culminated in just such riots and lawless outbreaks as we witnessed in Columbus this morning.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank y'all for coming here today. But I'll start by saying, you are no longer ladies. We are mothers. We are wives. But most importantly, we are women. You see, that's right. You see, the ladies in Columbus, Georgia are sitting at their dinner tables, barely able to see the wood from all the supper that covers it. The ladies in Columbus, Georgia are giving up their stockings while we give up our wedding rings. The ladies in Columbus, Georgia are serving coffee and cakes to their pampered husbands, while our men are ravaged in the fields, and for what? Pride. If there's one thing the rich men who started this war know, it's pride. Well, women, I think now we have something to be proud for, don't you say? Now let me ask you this. Who are the providers now? Who's working in them factories? Who's making the ammunition for our men and raising their children while they leave us to die? It's us women. It ain't ladies. We don't want for petticoats and pearls or coffees and cakes. We want for bread and milk and thread to sew the rags we've left for clothing. And it's right here. It's right here on Broad Street. Down Broad Street is a land of plenty, but plenty come with a price. I say we name our own price just like the rich. For if our desperation is worth anything, if our suffering is worth anything, if our men are worth anything, then we paid in full already. Yeah. This may be a rich man's war, but today is our battle. Let us fight for something worth fighting for. Our men, our children, and our lives. Woo!
Oh, I saw it all. I saw the whole thing. By the looks of it, I would have thought the war was over. Bunch of women hauling off bacon and shoes and wheat and what have you. Carrying pistols and knives too. And they was angry. You could see it in their eyes. So I sees them gathering near Broad and Franklin. Well, ain't been much excitement in Columbus lately. Most thing poor people do with their time is starve. Well, it seems like the cheapest entertainment a fella could find around here. Except for them store owners, I suppose. Well, see, I was just minding my time on the corner, and I see a few women folk talking, nothing strange. Then a few more, and a few more, and a few more. And the next thing I know is a whole crowd rounded up. One of them, the head hen, stands up in front of them, says a few things about womanhood and such, you know, starting the fire. And then, I knew I had to keep watch when this happened. All of them start raising pistols in the air like regular bandits they were. Well, that's all I needed to know, because I knew what was happening. I heard talk elsewhere, people beyond desperate nowadays. I've seen a few towns along the river devastated by the cause, talking of riots. But I ain't stuck around one place long enough until April 11th. What a sight. So they starts marching, and they had a mean march, just huffing and puffing curses down the street. And whoo, you know what my first thought was? Good for them. Yeah, after everywhere I've been with not a thing done, it was good to see someone taking a stand. See, being a sailor, well, former sailor, I'm somewhat between ports right now. Anyway, I know that there's nothing the poor can afford, and ain't nothing the rich can't have, and Confederate currency ain't worth horse bucky. But I better not say that too loud, as they will arrest me again if I dare breathe a whisper. Did I tell you they arrested me? And if you was to ask me what for, I couldn't tell you. Maybe I got caught up in the excitement and I said, "Get them! Take all they got! Feed yourselves and your babies! Get them all!" Or something like that. I don't exactly remember. But, you know, apparently saying words aloud is a crime nowadays. Yeah, you know who didn't get arrested? All them women. They took all they could from a Mr. at G.O.A. Norris dry goods store, and then the police come up. Women left with all they could carry, which was a lot. And who did they arrest? Guess. Yeah, me! They arrested me. Saying, if they was not encouraged by vagabonds, that's what they called me and my fellow spectators, vagabonds. Well, they says if they hadn't been encouraged, none of this would have happened. Well, I says to them, none of this would have happened if you didn't make the women folks starve. Well, yeah, and am I right?
Yeah!
Get some applause on this. Well, the constabulary did not take kindly to that, and I was put in jail for a short time. To be honest, it wasn't so bad. Just another place to wait till the war was over. Of course, if these riots are saying anything, it's this. Folks are tired of waiting. Waiting for the war to be over. Waiting for food. For the soldiers to come back. waiting for everything. Well, seems like waiting ain't good enough for Columbus, Georgia. Why should it be? Waiting ain't good enough for the South anymore. But that's all we can do. So I'm gonna sit in my corner every day in this town and the next one and wait until this damn war is over with. And then well, who knows?
Mercy, it's hot out here on this boat. Of course now, being from South Georgia, it doesn't bother me like it does some of these Navy boys from up north. It may be they're thinking Mr. Lincoln wouldn't have been so quick to try and keep the South in the Union if he'd known how hot it was down here. Well, the heat down here off the Florida coast is a cool breeze compared to the hot time in Columbus, Georgia, and the spring of '63 that sent me absconding. I came downstream to Apalachicola where I joined the U.S. Navy as a freeman. First class aboard Pleasant Valley, trading my coat brush and razor for a cutlass and a revolver. You see, I used to serve as a valet to Mr. Wiley on his place outside Bainbridge and accompanying him up and down the Flint and Chattahoochee rivers when his business required it. That's how I came to be in Columbus that 11th day of April 1863. Master Wiley and I came to Columbus to procure various items for Mr. Norris's dry goods store, advertised as lately brought in through the blockade. It turns out we weren't the only ones with business to conduct with Mr. Norris that morning. As we made our way from our lodgings on Broad Street, near the Naval Yard to the shop, we could not help but notice, well, mob is the only thing you could call it. A mob brandishing weapons and curses that was all made up of women. I don't rightly know that I've ever seen such sight in my life. And I'll dare say that neither had Master Wiley, judging from the way the cigar fell from his mouth. They and we converged at Mr. Norris's, but Master Wiley and I held back as the ladies were due our courtesy and we were in fear of bodily harm. Now, as they went about their business helping themselves to items at discount, they were urged on the most colorful of those river and coast trade vagabonds that inhabit the docks of Columbus these days, Mr. Shanghai Brooks. I don't know Brooks' proper Christian name. I don't know if he has a proper Christian name to answer to, but he certainly answered for what that plague of feminine fury was doing. When the police was summoned and had to put a stop to the lady's shopping spree, they arrested Shanghai as the instigator of the affair. Poor Shanghai Brooks. I don't know that he helped the lady's cause by shouting encouragement. I know he didn't help himself, but he did help me. I thought to myself that if it had come to this, that the women of the South were rebelling against their men who were already in rebellion, with innocent bystanders like Shanghai getting caught up in the turbulence, well, I thought it might be time I found my way downstream, down to where Shanghai Brooks said the U.S. Navy was keeping watch, down to where the Flint and Chattahoochee come together as the Apalachicola, and down to the bay where it meets the Gulf. Funny how a group of women looking to their own affairs can send a man looking after his.
Ladies and gentlemen, a hand for our cast. Mr. Julian Hernandez as Shanghai Brooks. Miss Leva Beecham as the head hen. And Mr. Jonathan Perkins as Pleasant Wiley. To give you a little background, this riot was not an isolated incident. There were riots all across the South in the spring of 1863, and there were three factors playing into this. One, a great deal of the food being produced in the South and the clothing and cloth being produced in the South was going to the armed forces. Secondly, the previous harvest had been blighted by a drought, so there would have been a food shortage anyway. And third, and this is the thing that really set the women off, the blockade runners and the merchants were not shipping in foodstuffs and necessities to make up for the lack that they already knew was there. They were bringing in luxury goods. And so that's the final thing that pushed the women over the edge. And at this time, what we'd like to do is throw the program to you, the viewing public, And if you have any questions about what you've learned today, or want to ask any of the actors what it's like to do this sort of performance, it is now time for your input into our Little Dog and Pony show.